Welcome to Parenting Adventures. We help parents empower their kids to build a growth mindset so they can tackle any size challenge that school and life can throw at them. From grades to bullying and struggles at home and school, and everything in between. Whether you're in the elementary alphabet stage or navigating high school credits, we're diving into how you can relate and influence positive action. Stick around for real solutions, expert tips, and stories that resonate and inspire. Ready for personalized mindful tutoring? Head to tutorteach.ca/tutoring to see how our 9 cornerstones to success have helped over 3,000 students achieve their goals. Now, let's dig into the episode.
Have you ever felt overwhelmed by the mental load and pressures of being a, quote, good mom? You're not alone. I'm your host, Lara, and today we have a special guest, Kayla Huszar. Kayla is a registered social worker and expressive art therapist who truly understands the chaos of modern motherhood. In today's episode, we dive into Kayla's journey and how she found her way into expressive art therapy. We explore what expressive art therapy is and how it can uniquely benefit mothers, especially those who feel like they've lost themselves in the role of parenting. We talk about the most common struggles Kayla sees in her practice and the pressures of motherhood in the age of social media. Kayla shares practical ideas for incorporating creativity into your daily life and offers insight into how mothers can reconnect with themselves when they've become too overwhelmed. If you've ever felt invisible, stuck, or guilty for wanting more in your parenting journey, you don't want to miss this conversation. Kayla brings wisdom, empathy, and actionable advice to help mothers rediscover their authentic selves. Stay tuned for this heartfelt and empowering episode. Kayla, I'd love to start by hearing a little bit more about your journey. What inspired you to get into this work of supporting mothers, and how did you find your way to expressive art therapy?
So I had a really rough intro to motherhood. My baby exited my body and was not breathing. And so they pressed the panic button on the wall. And for about 60 seconds, it was real scary. And those 60 seconds felt like an eternity. And what I didn't know leading up to and being pregnant is that I had pre-existing mental health things that would absolutely contribute to what I describe as the downfall of my mental health after my first son was born. And how I came to this work is for many years, I worked for a nonprofit, the YWCA in Regina, Saskatchewan. And I worked in many different programs, but the most profound experience that I had was being the acting director for an emergency receiving home for foster care children. And so when a foster family was not available to take a child that was about to be apprehended from their family, we were like the next step. And so we were a staffed group home. And what I learned there about children and trauma and relationship and attachment really moved me and also burnt me out. So what I experienced was vicarious trauma, which is where mental health or health services staff members or employees experience a level of stress or trauma that's kind of absorbed, into yourself as much as you try to not do that. I experienced some like vicarious trauma burnout. And ironically, someone in my family who owns a creative business asked me to be their assistant. I was like, yes, please. I would like to do something creative and very less intense. And so I worked as a photography assistant for 2 years during my pregnancy. And after my son was born and I experienced what I did in my mental health realm, in my relationship, in my family, in my life, there was this urge, this like inner knowing inside of me that I wanted to somehow like bring together these two things. So this like heavy social work helping piece and the creative piece. And I just happened to be reading an article from a local social worker that was published nationally. And she was a trained art therapist. And at the bottom of her article, she had listed all of the places a Canadian could go to learn about art therapy. And it was this complete serendipitous moment where I clicked on this institute, the Prairie Expressive Arts Institute in Calgary. And I was like, yes, there was just like, I have never thought about anything less. And I was a young mom, my partner's shift work. I was like working part-time. And I was like, yes, this is what I'm going to do.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You felt a calling to what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Your professional and personal life kind of all collided at one time and then led you down that path.
Yes. Yes. And at the time, I had exposure to expressive arts and play already because I'd taken a class in university that was centered around how to get people to think outside the box when it comes to healing and make art and move their bodies. And it particularly helped in my children's programming because they're not sitting and talking. They're playing, they're moving their bodies, they're expressing themselves. And so it just felt like it clicked. And the training took me away from my home in Regina. I had to drive to Calgary and stay there for 10 days. And we did, out of those 10 days, 9 of them were like 9-hour days of hands-on learning, theoretical, like really digging into the expressive arts, the philosophies, the theories, how you do it in different scenarios. And because of the nature of expressive arts therapy, we were experiencing it all. Like it wasn't just like class students. We were like experiencing it, living it, healing with it. And there was this profound moment at about day 3 of the training that I was like, mothers need this. Like, this is the answer. Talk therapy is amazing when it works. And when it doesn't, or when a mother or woman can't find the words for what she's experiencing, because it's also rooted in all kinds of societal and patriarchy and gendered conditioning things, the expressive arts just like opens the pathway to be able to express it, to find the words instead of having the words first.
It's such a vulnerable position to be in, and so finding those words can be hard. And if we can offer play therapy to children and art therapy to children, why can't that continue into adulthood? That's exactly what I'm thinking as you're talking about this. So for those who might not be familiar, can you explain what expressive art therapy is? How does it benefit mothers specifically? And what kind of transformations have you seen in your clients?
The best way that I can explain expressive arts therapy is that it is a way to move the stuck stuff in your body and getting it out of your brain and into the room or onto the paper, so that you can really say what's going on in your life. And so expressive arts therapy is different from art therapy in the sense that its whole purpose is to move between creative mediums. So in any given experience, in the theory, we're supposed to hit at least 2 or 3. And those include visual art, music, movement, voice, drama or play, or any other creative expression with the body. And so when someone is in front of me, I am, inviting them into these creative spaces. Consent really matters. Acknowledging the uncomfortable places really matters. And so if someone says to me, I'm not into that today, then we move on, or we explore what that resistance looks like. So how it benefits mothers is that it allows you to talk about or express what's going on in your motherhood reality, whatever that looks like, without getting into the mode of like venting or just updating. What I hear from a lot of my clients who have experienced talk therapy that wasn't a fit for them was that they felt like they would just go to therapy, they would update for 45 minutes, their therapist would give them a summary, potentially some homework, potentially not. And they would just come back and do this whole circle all over again without getting into the roots of what they really need, or like the roots of um, like growth or movement in the stuck places. And I I remember very vividly, one of my very first clients was a mom of two children. She had experienced a very glorious, amazing night out without her children, and she felt guilty about it. She felt guilty about the interactions with some other people. I'm just like letting loose and giving herself this permission to just like be a human. And there was other things going on in the background, but the thing that really helped her was our work specifically in the creative realm of understanding who she is. And so doing a lot of spontaneous collages, writing poetry without calling it poetry, like I call it wordplay. um, and after about 6 sessions, I could sense that she was like really getting a handle on who she was, and she was connecting with her partner again, and she was yelling less, and came to a close. And what she said to me was she could express in this room what she couldn't in other rooms, because it was either met with unsolicited advice, coping tools that weren't going to work, or things that she'd already tried. And what she really needed was the relationship, because therapy happens in relationship. Um, but she needed a space to get everything that was up in her head either out of her mouth or through her hands or through her body. And that's where she healed. So in expressive arts therapy, as like a Venn diagram, if you can imagine it, there's like one circle with the therapist in it, one circle with the client in it, and the other circle is the art. And at the very center is where the magic happens. That's where everybody who goes to therapy, that's what they want. They want what's in the middle of that Venn diagram. And that's what happens. That's where the healing is. So in expressive arts therapy, the talking isn't the therapy. I'm just a guide. And it's the art, it's the creativity that is the therapy. That is the growth and the healing.
It's so loaded, and I love it because, first of all, I'm speaking from experience even for myself. I have 4 young kids. When you become a mom, somehow the day you become a mom, it overtakes the identity of who you were before. And so the mom guilt starts the day that child enters the world. And then what I love about this art therapy is that along the way that you said you're working through things, and the client starting to kind of work through whatever the issue is, but maybe they're finding an interest that's just for themselves along the way. So maybe they're like, hey, I really like theater, or I really like dance, or some sort of form of art. And so they're finding something within themselves that does set them apart from being a partner and a mom, and doing the things around the house that can feel very isolating. And so not only are they getting the help to kind of move through their concerns and their issues, but maybe they're finding that innate, hobby or interest or desire that is just for themselves, which is really hard as a mom to find something that's just for you, that's for nobody else, just for you. So in your practice, what are some of the biggest struggles or challenges you see mothers facing? Is there a common issue that tends to bring them to you?
I really focus on like loss of identity as the kind of presenting thing. And if we put loss of identity in the beginning of like a high schooler's brain map, is like anxiety, depression, stress, burnout, guilt, shame. Who am I now? Who was I then? Who was I as a daughter, or who was I as a son? And so the core that I like to work in is that sense of self, that sense of identity. And when that feels kind of solid, The rest of it feels, I'm not going to use the word easier, but there's definitely less decision fatigue, less guilt, um, the ability to handle stress, like the distress tolerance or the quick to irritate, those things kind of subside. It's not like they're gone. We're still humans living in a human world where transitions happen, sleep deprived children display certain temperaments. And so that core piece of sense of self, or rediscovering who they are, redefining who they are, in and outside of motherhood. Like, because we are not only just moms. Like, that's not the only thing about me. I didn't just like, it feels like it, but I didn't just like lose all of the things that were me the minute that child, was either conceived or exited a person's body. Like, you were a whole ass person before this other human being has entered into your life.
100%. And there's a little bit of a grievance, I find, of that person, where it's not that they're gone, but things have shifted, things have changed, priorities are different. The selfish part of you kind of has to go. And you're excited, and all these endorphins come through, and everything, that you've entered this, this motherhood or parenthood, but you're still saying goodbye to a piece of who you are, and there's almost no transition. It literally slaps you in the face when it happens. And so I know I hear a lot of fellow parents say, well, when the baby comes, they're going to work on my schedule and I'm not going to be changing anything. But then the baby comes and it's not really doable that way. It's crazy how much they just change your world. And so having an outlet like this would just be so important and different and unique. And I just think it's so important for moms to have this kind of support, because they really do feel like an unheard population, I think. So many mothers describe feeling like they gradually lose themselves once they take on the role of mom. In your opinion, why does this pattern happen? Is it societal expectations, internal pressure, or a combination of both?
All the above.
Fair.
All the above.
I can see that.
Yeah. Yeah. And to speak to the societal expectations, there is so many unspoken, subtle, unconscious, unintentional ways that we put people in categories. And we expect, in a heteronormative relationship, we expect different things from mom than we do of dad. And it is still a very, it is a deeply rooted expectation that sometimes we just don't see coming. And we also don't see ourselves participating in it either, right? Like, even for some of my clients who went into parenthood thinking that they wouldn't end up in those typical gender roles, or they were going to do it differently, or, all those things. And I've witnessed it happen really amazingly in certain families. And in other ways, the structure, the society, the work schedule just doesn't allow for the breaking of that cycle completely.
Yeah, it's more traditional. And motherhood in the age of social media comes with its own set of pressures. How do you see platforms like Instagram affecting how mothers feel about themselves and their roles?
I think I know that we are more affected by it than we even know. I am old enough to remember a time without social media and without smartphones. And it gravely, and is a direct correlation to anxiety, depression, and burnout, and guilt. And sometimes just simply not engaging with it is the most powerful and profound way that a person can take care of themselves.
I believe it, and I experienced that myself. Whether it's you're kind of sizing yourself up a little bit against these other moms who maybe they lost their baby weight faster, or I read someone the other day whose baby's the same age as mine who's sleeping the full nights. And whereas mine, lucky to get an hour. And so you're thinking, well, what am I doing wrong? How come they're succeeding and I'm not? And, how did they bounce back and it's taking me so much longer? Or there's just so much of that. And especially with social media kind of showing the luxury of life more than the truth of life. So, you're seeing them on flights and their kids seem to do really well. Oh, they played with cups on the plane and my child won't even sit still for half a flight. And so you're really starting to size yourself up and measure yourself up against other moms. And without even recognizing that you're doing that, it plagues your mental state, right? So I think social media has really, really great things to it, but this is one area where I don't think that we understand how much it's really overwhelming us. And like you, I too remember the world without social media. And so I miss those nice 90s days.
Where like you had to literally log into your computer to do any kind of communication. And now it's just like rapid fire, constant.
So for moms who are feeling stuck or overwhelmed, how can they start to incorporate creativity into their lives in a way that supports their mental and emotional well-being? What are some easy, approachable ideas?
My go-to, which requires almost zero time and zero supplies, I'm going to say, is to do a brain dump. Set a timer for 5 minutes and free write literally every thought that comes into your mind. And then at the end of the 5 minutes, or if you get in the flow, 10 minutes, it can greatly reduce the mental chatter and the loudness and the um, invisible mental and emotional labor that parents do. It is the kind of go-to resource that I share with all of my clients because you can do it on your phone. You can write it out in a notes app. You could voice note yourself. You could get out a journal and a pen and a paper, or, if you happen to be listening to this right now and you're at work, you could like grab some printer paper and just like write. That's one of the quickest, I think, like the quickest and the most impactful. If you only have if you only had 5 or 10 minutes, that's what I would suggest people do. If the action of something feels really overwhelming, then what I would suggest is simply trying to reduce stimulation. So this is where we're removing something instead of asking you to do something. And so simply by removing scrolling that is not serving you from a time of day where you feel like you would rather be doing something else can be really impactful for your level of stress. So let's say the average person, as statistics say, is that 6 hours a day, and 3 hours of that are just web browsing. And so what I would suggest to a parent, if they were looking to do something quick and easy, is to put your phone in another room at a time of day where you feel like you don't need to be looking at it. For some people, that's like, I'm not going to look at my phone until we're out the door. Or for some people, that might be, okay, I'm going to not scroll during bedtime routine and I'm going to read a book. It doesn't mean that you can't be using your phone at that time, but potentially just changing what you're looking at.
Setting boundaries for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of moms feel guilt for pursuing their own passions or interests outside of their role as a parent. What would you say to those mothers who are struggling with that guilt? How can they give themselves permission to follow their own path?
Do it anyway. I mean, the permission that people are often looking for is external, and it could be external. If you have a really great partner, a really great support system, they could, hand you a weekend away or horseback riding lessons, or, register you for a pottery class. But at the end of the day, you are the only one who can give yourself that permission. So if you are in the thick of organizing extracurriculars or buying the perfect thing for your baby or your nursery, I would encourage people to think about, what if they dedicated that same level of energy and passion and organization to just one thing that's yours? just one thing that brings like enrichment and light to your life.
When I had my first baby, I didn't realize that the phrase "it takes a village" felt so real. My first was a preemie, and so we were in the NICU for a month, and I didn't realize how much I would have needed people to surround me at that time. And now that I have four, it's even more so. And so I always tell people who I think aren't giving themselves a little bit of time is accept the help. If someone says, "Hey, I have no problem watching your kids," say thank you, here you go, and go and take that hour or whatever to take a bath, go do a workout, go for a walk, get a massage, go do what fills your cup. Because some people don't have that village, and then that's where it gets harder for them to do it, you know? So like you said, find 5 minutes, even if it's just to do a brain dump. That's still something that's just for you. You don't have to share that with anybody, right? So yeah, I'm sure I would feel safe to assume that the biggest thing you deal with is mom guilt. I can't imagine, like every mom feels a level of it. I'm sure of it.
Yes.
So for moms listening today who might be feeling invisible or stuck and wanting to get started with expressive art therapy, how and where can they reach out to you?
So I'm on Instagram with my handle is at Kayla, Kayla period Huszar. And I have lots of free YouTube videos, and my website is also the same, www.kaylahuszar.com.
That's awesome. Well, I have loved having this conversation. It really hits home for me as a parent, and I know it will for so many other parents. It needs to be talked about. It needs to be addressed, and moms need that support. And so thank you for the work that you're doing. It's making us moms feel like there's someone else who understands, and we need more of that. So thank you so much, and for digging into all the different ways that moms can take a few minutes for themselves. I think that's so invaluable.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that's a wrap for this episode. Thanks so much for joining us on Parenting Adventures. Remember, you're not alone in this journey, and we're always here to help. Parenting is like trying to fold a fitted sheet. It seems impossible at first, but with enough determination, you can make it work, kind of. If you're ready for the next step, visit tutorteach.ca/tutoring for personalized mindful tutoring and discover how we've helped over 3,000 students reach their goals. Until next time, keep calm and fold on.